What's going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our DFS value plays for this week's Worldwide Technologies Championship at Mayakoba. Going to cover our top 6 GPP players priced $8,000 and below on Draftkings and give you an idea of some salary flexibility and maybe some ownership leverage you can get to the field. Of course, earlier today, we touched on our core picks, the plays towards the top of the board that I have my eye on, but these picks are arguably even more important. Up top, there are some important decisions to be made on every single slate, but down low, those decisions are a little bit harder to make. You're dealing with diamonds in the rough players that have imperfections, and that's what we're going to try and cycle through here to find some of the players with top end upside. From week to week, you're going to have plenty of these players that end up flaming out, missing the cut, so on and so forth. But the important part is to try and get a Kevin Yu from last week, a Ben Griffin, for example, that went out there, gave you that top 5 upside in your player pool, right? If you're taking 15, 20 guys down low, you just want to make sure that you have 2, maybe 3 pop performances out there that try and hit the nuts in your GPP pool. So that's the idea here. These 6 players are ones that I especially will have my eye on. Alrighty, we've got our projections up, and the first value pick is going to be Harris English at $7,700. Now, his recent form, at least over the last 50 measured rounds, is still a little bit hairy, but the more and more you zoom in, the smaller sample size that you give old Harry English, the better he starts to look, because he has certainly rebounded from the injury, had a lot of rust early on when he came back, was also probably not 100%, but looks healthy now, and the game is trending in the right direction. So if we look at his recent form here, and this is sorted by his last few starts, he's gone 40th, 28th, missed cut, top 10 finish, and before that was the rough stretch that we were talking about. He did play well at the Travelers. That was his first start back, an event that he's won in the past, so maybe not so surprising, but certainly over the last 4 events is starting to put up the numbers that we're expecting, and even over that last 50 round stretch, so let's go up here to $7,700, you'll get an idea that he's starting to hit it better. I mean, off the tee is still hemorrhaging strokes, but on approach is closer to a neutral, and with those short game categories is his usual self, right? Gaining close to 1/3 of a stroke per round in each category, actually closer to half a stroke per round with the shots gained putting stats. And at this course specifically, has also had quite a bit of success. So if we go up here, Harry English, top 5, his last 2 starts, did not play here in 2021, but in 2020 and 2019 was able to go out there and finish in the top 5. I think that he's moving in the right direction. He looks healthy to me, and he's an elite course history guy. He's probably a 9K range golfer when he's in form. I mean, there was a stretch there where he won multiple times in a year. He was in that 8 and 9K range every single week. Maybe it's time to buy in early on the Harris English. He's still relatively low owned, to have 4.7% owned right now, and brings a ton of top end upside. So somebody that I'm very comfortable getting to and will be in quite a few lineups. Next up, we've got Adam Long, arguably one of the best course history guys that you could possibly imagine. You take a look at his event history here, and you'll get an idea for why I'm on him. A 22nd place finish, a 3rd, and a 2nd place finish. So somebody you absolutely had to have over those last few years. And in fact, when I won my GPP here, was in that lineup. So a little bit of a soft spot for Adam Long here, but the shots gained metrics also back up the sentiment. So when you take a look at this, you can see he's gaining across 3 of the 4 shots gained categories, and is just a marginal loser in terms of his around the green play. Off the tee, isn't the longest player despite the last name, but hits a ton of fairways, which is exactly what I'm looking for around this venue. I'll remind you on my key stats tab that accuracy percentage is weighted in 10.5% of my model, which is tied for first in terms of the most important stat. And the other stat there is birdie or better percentage, which is a no-brainer at a golf tournament where you're going to get 20, maybe 25 under par winning. So Adam Long checks a lot of the boxes we're looking for off the tee accuracy, also an aggressive player that makes a lot of birdies. That's why he's had so much success around this venue. And on Paspalum, seems to make a lot of putts too. Down at Corrales, which is another Paspalum course, he's had quite a bit of success. And if you look at his Puerto Rico Open record too, has also had some success. But unfortunately, we don't have shots gained metrics for those events. So we don't know exactly how many strokes that he was gaining with the flat stick, but you would have to imagine with all of that consistent success that the putter was probably a big reason why. Our next pick is going to be Kirk at $7,200. There's actually two guys at $7,200 I like, so it's a little bit of a sweet spot, I suppose, for my player pool. But Kirk, another accurate player off the tee, very similar to an Adam Long. The one thing I'll say about Harris English that I meant to mention is I'm mostly looking for these off the tee accuracy guys or players that have shown a propensity to lay up off the tee here. Harris English, with some of those top 5 finishes, has certainly laid up off the tee because we know when he's taken out the big dog, he is going to be missing wildly from left to right. You absolutely cannot do that around El Camaleon. So one thing that we know Scotty Scheffler has done, so I talked about it during the core picks video, is just hit a lot of irons off the tee, maybe 3 woods rather than drivers. Harris English over the last 2 to 3 events has shown a huge propensity to do so. So, if I'm not going to take an elite accuracy guy, they have to be somebody that I know is willing to club down a lot, because around this track, if you're too aggressive off the tee, a la maybe a Jason Kokrak, who was able to take down the Charles Schwab Challenge a few years ago with a very aggressive strategy off the tee, it's not really going to work around here. And if you employ that strategy, it's high risk, high reward, kind of like you saw with the Kokrak, but something I don't really want exposure to. So I'm glad that he's willing to go out there and take a little bit more of a calculated approach, kind of like a Scotty Scheffler, for example. But Kirk, somebody he does not have that problem. So I like him there at $7,200. Something to note here is that the stats over the last 50 rounds have just kind of been a little bit under the radar, right around neutral across all 4 categories. His best stat category is around the green, which is pretty non-existent this week, so I'm not going to give him too much credit there, but is a slight positive off the tee due to his accuracy, right around a neutral approach and a neutral putter. So not much you can say about his game other than when you look at the field strength, you look at some of the guys around him, he is by far the most consistent player there. And at this point of the week, it's early on a Tuesday, he's coming in relatively low owned, right? 6.4%. That's not non-existent for the bottom of the 7K range, but he's not somebody who's sticking out in terms of ownership, and you have to worry about getting a ton in your lineups to get leverage. Joel Dahmen, on the other hand, getting a little bit more steam. I have him at 10.3%, which is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping that Joel might be a little bit overlooked, but he has a great track record at these fall swing events, but more specifically on the past Palm surface. And when you take a look at his event history, it's kind of the kicker here. So Kirk has made this cut his last 4 starts, very similar to a Joel Dahmen who's had that same feat. Just he's had a lot more top end finishes, right? He has a 20th and a 6th place finish. Kirk has had at best a 33rd place finish. So if you're looking for a cash play, right, we know that Kirk is probably the guy you want to get to. But Joel Dahmen over here has shown a little bit of top end upside too. And outside of this event, we know that, this course obviously has past Palm, but the Kraus Putakania, an event that he's actually won before, also has the same sort of greens. And I believe at Vedanta Vallarta, he also had a relatively solid performance. So Joel Dahmen, $7,200, 10.3% owned. I understand the sentiment there. He's a solid play across the board. The recent form metrics aren't super great, but kind of like a Kirk, he's right around a neutral from tee to green. He's gaining off the tee with his accuracy. Another plus player when it comes to his driving accuracy percentage. Gaining on approach, around the green, a slight loser, and the putter, a little bit more of a significant loser. But on this surface historically, and again, we don't have the shots gained breakdown of it, he's had a lot of really good finishes on past Palm, which we know is most likely due to his putting stats. Moving down to our next picks, a little bit cheaper on the board, Chez Reavie, so $6,700. I'm going right back to the well. This is his type of golf course, right? An accuracy first off the tee sort of place where approach play matters and putting is minimized. And on past Palm, it's a working theory of mine. We're still doing a lot of back testing on it, but I think that on past Palm, some of the mediocre to lower tier putters have an advantage over some of the better putters. You're dealing with slower greens. Usually the greens that have past Palm, this is just a generalistic statement, but it's pretty much true for all of the courses we've seen it on, except for Kiawah Island. That's the one exception, is that they're also relatively flat. They don't have much undulation to them. They're usually running relatively slow. Corrales, resort style course. This course has unbelievably flat greens, right? It's a Greg Norman design, more of a resort style. Cocoa Beach Golf Club, where they have the Puerto Rico Open, similar style. Vedanta Vallarta, another Greg Norman design, right? So flat greens. A majority of these courses are flat, slow greens, which plays directly into the lower skill putters. So if he's going to hit a bunch of fairways, and his approach stats of late have been unbelievable. So, off the tee, We know he's almost always going to lose to the field, but maybe this week gains just because of how short it is. Also, the fact that he hits so many fairways. So at $6,700, let's look at this. So what does he got? Here he is. He's gaining 0.444 shots gained per round on approach. That's great. Off the tee, a slight loser. Should be a little bit better this weekend, but the putter has been a slight negative. So we need that to come around. But if we're working with this theory that the putters that are maybe a little bit less skilled have success at a course that has slower greens, then I think it's going to point you in the right direction. So I'm going to Chez Reavie, that's for sure, especially if he's only 2.6% owned. And the last pick we're going to talk about is Chez Reavie. This one could get us into trouble. It did last time out, right? So I'm going right back to the well with Chez Reavie. And the reasoning is he played well at Corrales, a course with paspalum grass. We're back on the surface now. In the same argument I made last time for playing for Ramey stands. He's making a bunch of birdies, and sure, he's posting those doubles, those bogey streaks that will keep you out of making a cut line. But if he can clean that up, he's posting everything he needs to score-wise, especially at a course where you're going to see a winner of like 20 to 25 under par to get to that ceiling performance. And now he's $6,100. He's towards the complete bottom of the board in terms of pricing. We know that he's had a spike putter on paspalum before, and he's only 1.2% owned. So I'm not going to spend an entirety on Chez Reavie here. The recent form speaks for itself. There's a reason why he's priced where he is. So $6,100 down here, missed cut 69th, 28th, and then a string of missed cuts. So if you're looking for somebody in form, run in the opposite direction. But if you're looking for somebody that might just get into contention if he has his form here and on a surface that he's had that spike performance on in the past, which you can't say for everybody else in the field, then Chez Reavie is your guy. All right, that is all I've got for the DFS value plays. Before you hop on out of here, go ahead and smash that like button, and also go ahead and comment who your favorite play is below $8,000 on Draftkings that you're getting to try and get some salary relief. We will have our usual DFS live stream, which will be tomorrow evening, so Wednesday if you're watching this tomorrow, at 7 p.m. Eastern time, where I'll be able to cover all of your live questions, so bring any of those by for the live stream. We'll touch on a weather report, some GPP ownership strategy, some lineup constructions both for cash and for some of the larger field contests. Everything you need to know going into lock to make your lineup. So I'm looking forward to it. I will have a link in the description of the video to it, so you can go ahead and set a reminder as well. But until then, guys, best of luck with your lineups and the outright bets that you decide to place. And make sure you are subscribed to the channel here if you haven't already, so you don't miss any of that content when it drops in the future, whether it's videos like this for future tournaments, that live stream, or all of the NFL content that I'm posting for Showdown and for the main slates. You won't want to miss any of it. But like I said, best of luck, and I'll catch you guys next time.